In August 1590, a ship approached a small island off the coast of what is now North Carolina. 3 years earlier, this ship's captain had left 115 men, women, and children here on a strip of sand surrounded by ocean and forest, and sailed back to England for supplies. He was late, almost 3 years late. A war with Spain had trapped every English ship in port, and by the time he finally returned, he expected to find a struggling but living colony. Instead, he found nothing. No bodies, no signs of a struggle, no ash, no blood, no graves. The houses were gone, dismantled carefully, not burned or destroyed. The only clue anyone ever found was a single word carved into a wooden post: CROATOAN. No cross beside it, which had been the prearranged signal for distress. Just a word, and 115 people who were never seen again. This is the story of the Roanoke Colony, and more than 4 centuries later, we still don't fully know what happened. But recent discoveries have finally started to crack open one of the oldest unsolved mysteries in American history. Let's start with why these people were on that island in the first place. In 1584, Queen Elizabeth I of England granted Sir Walter Raleigh a charter to establish a colony in the New World. This wasn't charity. England was locked in a brutal rivalry with Spain, and Spain already had a foothold across the Americas. Raleigh wanted a base, somewhere English ships could resupply and raid Spanish treasure fleets. Roanoke Island, tucked behind a barrier of sandbars on the coast of present-day North Carolina, looked perfect. Hidden from Spanish patrols close enough to the shipping lanes to strike. The first attempt, in 1585, was made up almost entirely of soldiers and gentlemen adventurers. It went badly. Relations with the local native tribes, especially a group called the CROATOAN, curdled into violence within months. The English destroyed a village over a stolen silver cup. Food ran short. When Sir Francis Drake happened to sail by the following year, the entire colony climbed aboard his ships and abandoned the settlement. But Raleigh wasn't finished. In 1587, he tried again, this time differently. Instead of soldiers, he sent families. Men, women, and children, 115 of them, led by an artist and mapmaker named John White. White had visited the region before. He'd painted detailed watercolors of native life, of plants, of animals, some of the earliest European depictions of what would become the United States. He believed in this colony. His own daughter, Eleanor, was pregnant, and shortly after they landed, she gave birth to a girl. They named her Virginia Dare, the first English child ever born in the Americas. For a moment, it must have felt like hope. But the colony was in trouble almost immediately. Relations with local tribes were already poisoned from the failed 1585 attempt, and food supplies were dangerously low. The colonists begged White to sail back to England for help. White didn't want to go. His daughter and infant granddaughter were here. But the colonists convinced him he was the only one with enough standing to secure supplies quickly. He left in late 1587, promising to return within months. He wouldn't see them again for 3 years. England, at that exact moment, was fighting for its survival. The Spanish Armada, over 100 warships, was bearing down on the English coast in 1588. Queen Elizabeth ordered every seaworthy ship into royal service. White was stuck. He tried twice to organize a resupply voyage and was blocked both times. It wasn't until August 1590, nearly 3 full years later, that he finally reached Roanoke again, and found an empty island. The word carved into the post, CROATOAN, pointed to something specific. CROATOAN was the name of a nearby island, and also the name of a native tribe who lived there, allies of the English, friendly with the colonists from the start. White took the word as a message. They've gone to CROATOAN, they're safe. He tried to sail there to confirm it. A hurricane wrecked his ship's anchor cables, nearly sank his vessel, and forced him back to England. He never returned to America. He died without ever learning what happened to his daughter, his granddaughter, or the other 113 colonists who vanished with them. For over 400 years, that's where the trail went cold. And in that vacuum, theories multiplied. The first and most dramatic theory was Massacre. Maybe hostile tribes, still angry over the violence from 1585, attacked and wiped out the colony entirely. It's a clean, simple explanation, but it has a serious problem. There were no bodies, no mass graves, no scattered bones, no burned buildings. Whatever happened, it didn't look like a slaughter. It looked like people packing up and leaving. A second theory was Spanish attack. Spain absolutely knew the English were trying to establish a base in the region, and Spanish ships did search for Roanoke specifically to destroy it. Spanish records from the 1580s and 90s even document reconnaissance missions along that coastline. But when Spanish scouts finally located the abandoned site years later, they found it exactly as White had, empty, with no evidence of a raid. A third theory, and for a long time the leading one, was assimilation. The colonists, out of supplies and desperate, dispersed and were absorbed into local native communities, most likely the CROATOAN, whose name was left as a deliberate message. This theory fit the evidence better than anything else. No bodies, a clear directional clue, and a friendly tribe nearby with every incentive to take in starving allies. But for centuries, it remained just a theory. There was no hard proof, until relatively recently. In 1998, archaeologists with the First Colony Foundation began systematically excavating Hatteras Island, which is what CROATOAN territory is called today. What they found rewrote the story. Buried in the soil were 16th century English artifacts, a gold signet ring, pieces of English guns, fragments of English pottery and tools. These weren't objects that would have been traded casually. They were the kinds of items a family would carry with them, would keep close, would only leave behind if they settled somewhere permanently, living alongside the people whose land it was. Even stranger, oral traditions among a nearby tribe called the Hatteras, and later the Lumbee people, spoke for generations of ancestors with gray eyes, an unusual trait pointing to European ancestry generations back. In the 1700s, a colonial official named John Lawson visited the region and wrote that some of the Hatteras people could, in his words, talk in a book, meaning they described their ancestors as literate and that some had gray eyes, a trait Lawson specifically connected in his own writing to the lost colonists. Genetic studies conducted in the 2000s on descendant communities have found DNA markers consistent with European ancestry, predating the Jamestown settlement by decades, meaning it couldn't have come from later colonization. Something else had introduced it earlier. Piece by piece, the picture that emerged wasn't a mystery of disappearance. It was a story of merging. The Roanoke colonists likely didn't vanish at all. They almost certainly walked to CROATOAN, exactly as the carved word said, and the CROATOAN people, who had been their allies from the very beginning, took them in. Over time, through marriage, through shared daily life, through the ordinary passage of generations, the distinction between colonist and CROATOAN simply dissolved. The English families didn't die out. They stopped being a separate group at all. But here's where the story gets even stranger, because that's likely not the whole picture either. Some artifacts and oral histories point somewhere else entirely, further inland, toward a group called the Roanoke, and later evidence tied to the Lumbee people near the Lumber River, over 50 miles from Roanoke. This has led modern researchers to a theory that's almost more unsettling than a mystery with one clean answer. The colonists may not have relocated as a single group at all. They may have split up, some going to CROATOAN, others moving further inland to different tribes entirely, dispersing not because of one dramatic event, but through the slow, mundane process of people making individual choices to survive. Which means the lost colony might not have a single answer because there was never a single fate. Some starved. Some may have been killed in later, smaller conflicts as tensions with settlers resumed in following decades. Some almost certainly lived long, full lives as members of native communities, their children and grandchildren growing up entirely outside the story England told about them. Virginia Dare, the first English child born in America, may have grown old as a native woman in a village with a name we'll never recover, having no memory at all of the English identity she was born into. And this raises the question that makes Roanoke different from almost every other historical mystery. We usually search for lost colonies, assuming there's a body to find, a battle to uncover, a disaster with a name. But what if the most likely explanation is the least dramatic one possible? Not a massacre, not a monster, not a conspiracy. Just people, hungry and abandoned by their own country, walking a few miles to the only community that had ever shown them kindness, and simply becoming part of it. For centuries, historians treated the empty word CROATOAN as a haunting clue in an unsolved crime. But maybe it was never a clue at all. Maybe it was the entire answer, carved plainly into a post, waiting 400 years for anyone willing to actually believe it. The colonists weren't lost. They knew exactly where they were going. It was England that lost them, 3 years too late, staring at an empty island, refusing to accept the simplest explanation sitting right in front of them the whole time. Somewhere in North Carolina today, there are people whose ancestry quietly traces back to a group of English families who were supposed to have vanished off the face of the earth in 1587. They didn't vanish. They just stopped being English, and nobody was ever really looking for that.